Horse keeps hugging pregnant woman. When doctor looks at ultrasound, he calls the police. Any horse owner will tell you that horses can pick up on things that humans can't. Their sixth sense allows them to detect energies and emotions that we elude with our five senses. An English woman named Jolene Jonas experienced this when she found out that she was pregnant. She and her fiancé were really happy, but they couldn't say the same for their horse. Their horse began acting really strange. They decided to go to the doctor just to be sure, but when the doctor saw the ultrasound, he immediately called the police. When Jolene and Ricky first heard that Jolene was pregnant, they couldn't believe their luck. They already tried for a few months to get pregnant, so when the good news was finally there, they were really excited. But not everyone was as excited as Ricky and Jolene. Their horse Keola thought otherwise. While everything proceeded nicely during the pregnancy, Keola began to act really strange, with constantly hugging Jolene and licking her belly. At first Jolene and Ricky ignored the horse's behavior, not realizing what Keola was actually trying to tell them. Meanwhile, the pregnancy progressed well up until 25 weeks into the pregnancy. Jolene experienced sharp pain in her back. This pain was so bad that she couldn't walk, so Ricky rushed her to the hospital. The doctor told Jolene that he had to make an ultrasound. When the doctor saw the ultrasound, he was shocked and he had to call the police immediately. Jolene regretted that she did not listen to her horse earlier. But how did they end up in this situation in the first place? Jolene and Ricky were together ever since they were 16 years old. They moved in together and soon after they bought a horse named Keola. But their relationship wasn't perfect. Like every relationship, something was still bugging Jolene. The couple were slowly building up their lives together over the next couple of years. There were still some things that were starting to bug Jolene, something that Jolene has had trouble with from the very first moment that she met Ricky up to the present day. By the time she and Ricky had been together for years, but he was still very secretive about his past, and it was starting to worry Jolene more and more. What could he be hiding from her, or what was so difficult for him to talk about? Jolene had asked him to tell her more on multiple occasions, but was always met by the same kind of reluctant responses. Ricky claims that he doesn't have a family anymore and that it hurts too much to talk about everything. He just wants to forget about it all. At this point, Jolene had just accepted it as the reality of the situation. Ricky had been this way ever since she knew him, and he was probably never going to change, but luckily this secretiveness was one of the few flaws Jolene had in her eyes, and she could live with it, at least for now. When the pair had been in a relationship for about 10 years, they decided they were ready to get married. They finally had the money to get married. To make it a wonderful day, Jolene hoped that she would maybe finally meet some of Ricky's family at the wedding. But maybe not to Jolene's surprise, but definitely to her disappointment, Ricky had only invited his friends to the wedding. And it was also only the friends he had met in the time that she knew him. Not a single person was there that had known Ricky from before he moved to the city at the age of 16. But overall, this didn't really bother Jolene that much. They had a great wedding with or without his family, and they had it fairly good together in general. Emotionally and romantically, they'd never been this close. Therefore, they decided to take another step. They wanted to expand their family, but that didn't go as planned. At first, they struggled to even get pregnant. Ricky and Jolene began to doubt themselves. Maybe there was something that they did not necessarily know about their health condition. They decided to see a doctor. The doctor did some tests to check everything was all right with both Ricky and Jolene. After the tests, the couple had to wait a few days. The doctor told them that he would call them with the results. However, when the doctor called them, they told the couple to come to his clinic, so they got nervous. When they arrived at the clinic, they were anxious. What if they would not be able to get kids? Luckily, the doctor took away all the tents. He assured them that they were both completely fine and healthy. After all, Ricky and Jolene were relieved, and more good news was on their way. Only a week after their medical checks, Jolene found out that she was pregnant. It was like a gift from heaven. They were thrilled with this news and shared it with all their loved ones. Everyone was obviously very happy for them except one. Their horse Keola did not seem happy with the pregnancy. In fact, it started to act weird. At first, Keola often licked the belly of Jolene, but later he started to do other strange things. Jolene even got scared of his behavior. At a certain point, Keola started to constantly hug Jolene quite aggressively every time it saw Jolene's belly. They couldn't figure out why did he feel threatened or was there something wrong with Keola himself. To make sure everything was okay, they went to see the vet for Keola. Maybe he was signaling that he did not feel okay. The vet did some medical checks but could not find anything that was not okay or strange. But the behavior of Keola didn't stop. In fact, it got even worse. Jolene decided to Google this strange behavior. But when she read some websites that elaborated about this strange behavior, she was shocked. She could only cry. Most of the websites told her that something was off with her own baby. Jolene obviously panicked, but she did not want to tell Ricky about what she found. So she decided to go to another person who she trusts with her whole heart. Jolene went to her mother to gather some advice. She did not know what to do, so she thought that her mother would be capable of giving the appropriate advice. And she got exactly the reaction from her mother that she expected. Her mother told her not to get carried away with the things she read on the internet, as they are often quite misleading. She had to follow her own gut and decide together with Ricky, so she did that. As they wanted to make sure everything was okay with their baby, they went to another medical check. Jolene was already 18 weeks pregnant, so the doctor could definitely tell them whether the baby was okay. In fear, they waited for the test results. After a few hours, the doctor came back to Jolene with good news. Everything was alright, so they had nothing to worry about. She was told to come back when she was 25 weeks into her pregnancy for a new ultrasound. Maybe Keola just had to get used to not being the only family member anymore, but a few weeks later they found out that that wasn't the case. At 23 weeks, Jolene suddenly experienced severe back pain. She did not feel alright and told Ricky that they had to go to the hospital. Jolene told him that it felt that she had to give birth already. Ricky didn't think twice when Jolene asked him to drive to the hospital. But there was one thing that stopped them from going as fast as they could. It was rush hour. Ricky did everything he could to avoid the traffic. But eventually they got totally stuck in traffic. Ricky saw only one opportunity to quickly come to the hospital. Ricky called an ambulance. Since they were stuck in traffic, they would be here for quite a while. An ambulance had the right to go through the traffic. After a few minutes the ambulance arrived and Jolene was able to go to the hospital quite fast. At the hospital, the doctor immediately wanted to make an ultrasound to check whether everything was okay with the baby. But during the ultrasound, the doctor's face expression changed. He actually looked quite shocked. As soon as he was done, he said something that worried Jolene. "I have to call the police." Jolene was obviously shocked by this. Why did the police get involved, and why did he not tell what was going on exactly? Jolene and Ricky as well became more and more angry about the whole situation. When was this going to end? After a few minutes the police arrived and they immediately asked Ricky to come with them. "Sir, we have some questions for you about your wife." Ricky was mind-blown. What did they want to know about her? At first they seemed to ask normal questions. They wanted to know who Ricky and Jolene were and where they lived. But after that the tone of the agents changed. They began to ask strange questions which shocked Ricky. They asked not only about who they were, but also where they've been the last weeks, and next to that they asked strange questions about their pregnancy. Why did the police want to know things about the pregnancy of Jolene? It didn't make sense to Ricky. Not only was Ricky surprised by the questions, he got a little bit angry at the police as well. Why did they want to know all of this? In the heat of the moment, he said something which the police did not appreciate. "Go and do your job, but leave me alone," he said, but he soon regretted that decision. The police didn't like his reaction as they deemed their questions as reasonable for their investigation. Therefore they took Ricky with them to the police station. Ricky panicked as he did not want to leave his wife alone in a hospital who may had to give birth in a few hours. Unfortunately, Ricky didn't have a choice and had to go with the police. They promised him that they would explain the situation over there. But at the same time Jolene panicked as she saw her husband leaving the hospital with the police. But then the doctor came to her. "We have to do a surgery," said the doctor. It was necessary for their baby. The doctor couldn't tell more at the moment since he was instructed by the police not to tell anything. The doctor told Jolene that he had a choice, however. She could choose whether or not she wanted the surgery, but she did not have to think long as it would be better for their baby. She immediately said yes. Now she only had to wait for the surgery and her husband Ricky. After a short hour of waiting, she went to the surgery room. Meanwhile, Ricky got to the police station where the police asked more questions. They seemed quite simple, but after a while they took Ricky to an interrogation room. Ricky obviously got more and more angry. First he had to go to the police station and now into the interrogation room. What was going on he could not figure it out, but then the police finally explained themselves a bit more. All of a sudden on the other side of the window there were 5 criminals standing next to each other. Ricky had to say whether he recognized someone or not, and to his shock he saw someone familiar. All Ricky could think was how this person ended up in a police cell. It was his own doctor, but why was he there? As soon as Ricky told the police that he recognized his own daughter, the police gave him some more context, as it was very strange for Ricky to be in this situation. The police told Ricky that Jolene's doctor found an illegal medical chip inside her body. This chip could regulate the medicines needed. However, this wasn't legal yet. Ricky's doctor apparently put it in the medicines of Jolene, which are on Ricky's name. Now everything made sense, but this wasn't the end of it all for Ricky, as Jolene was still in the hospital. Ricky rushed himself to the hospital thanks to the police, who drove him there, but when Ricky arrived he couldn't find Jolene anywhere. Where was she? He panicked. Was everything all right? Then he saw Jolene's doctor. He ran towards him panicking. The doctor asked him to be calm for other patients, but Ricky struggled with that. After a few minutes of anger the dust settled down and the doctor could finally tell Ricky where Jolene was. The doctor told Ricky what he already knew: she had a medical chip inside her body that needed to be removed as it was illegal. But Ricky still didn't know whether the baby was alright. The doctor asked Ricky to follow him. Ricky followed the doctor all the way to the surgery room where Jolene was. Ricky immediately asked the doctor whether she and the baby are okay. Luckily the doctor had good news. Jolene and the baby were both okay. She did not have to give birth yet, but they only needed to remove the medical chip, which probably was the reason for the severe back pain. After that Jolene was allowed to go home. After 40 weeks of pregnancy she finally gave birth to a girl named Julia. After all, this was a good story to tell their newborn son when he would be older. Next to that, Jolene and Ricky learned to always listen to the instincts of their horse.